Picture the world 66 million years ago, in the twilight of the Mesozoic era, as the Cretaceous period drew to its dramatic close. It was an age of titans. Everywhere you looked, the earth was shaking under the weight of colossal beasts. On solid ground, massive theropods and sauropods held court, while beneath the waves, the terrifying Mosasaurus reigned supreme. Yet even the heavens were no sanctuary. The prehistoric skies were the exclusive dominion of giants known as the Azhdarchids. This particular family of pterosaurs stands as the most infamous aerial dynasty the planet has ever witnessed. Distinguished by their serpentine necks and stilt-like legs, these creatures are legendary for achieving biological impossibilities in size. Among this lineage of sky monsters, one name usually strikes fear above all others: Quetzalcoatlus. This North American titan was so magnificent that scientists christened it after the Aztec feathered serpent deity. Most assume this beast holds the title for the largest aviator in history, but the truth is far more complicated. There was another Azhdarchid prowling the globe at the exact same time, one that likely eclipsed even the famous serpent god. This shadowed rival may very well be the true king of the skies. Enter the Hatzegopteryx. The legend begins in the 1970s in Romania, where a student excavation team unearthed two massive bone fragments, a skull piece and a humerus. The fossils were of such staggering proportions that the experts initially misidentified them entirely. They assumed these remains belonged to some unknown giant carnivorous dinosaur, but the bone structure told a different story. This was no dinosaur. It was a pterosaur of nightmarish scale. Yet, strangely, this discovery sat collecting dust for decades. It remained nameless and obscure for over 30 years, until finally, in 2002, it received its proper title. Scientists dubbed it times Hatzegopteryx thambema, times the monster of the Hatzeg Basin, honoring its ancient hunting grounds. The name references prehistoric Hațeg Island, but the monster suffix was certainly no poetic exaggeration. It was a direct acknowledgement of its ludicrous dimensions, with current estimates suggesting that a mature adult was simply massive. Its wingspan rivaled that of the Quetzalcoatlus, stretching an impressive 11 meters, or roughly 36 feet across. To put that in perspective, that is the same width as a Cessna 172 airplane. But some experts go further. Since its humerus bone measures longer than its North American cousins, there is a strong case that Hatzegopteryx was actually bigger. Some estimates push the limit to 12 meters, or 39 feet, crowning it the absolute largest flying creature in history. Even if the wingspan was merely equal, Hatzegopteryx still wins the heavyweight title. This thing was built like a biological tank. Far bulkier than its spindly relatives, it stood at a towering height of 5 meters. That is 16.5 feet tall, essentially staring a giraffe in the eye. This combination of height and bulk implies serious mass. It would have significantly outweighed the Quetzalcoatlus, though pinning down an exact number remains tricky due to its freakish build. Because of these absurd proportions, Hatzegopteryx isn't just a contender for the largest pterosaur ever known. It was also likely the apex terrestrial predator of Europe 66 million years ago, dominating the land as well as the sky. Ironically, its monstrous size was a direct result of its geography. Back then, Europe wasn't a continent, but a sprawling archipelago of islands. One of these was Hațeg Island. Roughly the size of modern-day Ireland, this landmass was cut off from the rest of the world. Surrounded by deep ocean for over 300 kilometers, or 190 miles, it was an isolated evolutionary laboratory. Crucially, the island lacked large carnivorous dinosaurs. With no T-Rex equivalents to compete with, the throne was empty. Hatzegopteryx stepped in to fill this power vacuum, evolving into a giant with zero competition and nothing to fear. It wasn't just the body that grew. It developed a gargantuan skull measuring 2.5 meters, or 8 feet. That is 8 feet and 2 inches of bone, making it one of the largest skulls of any land animal in history. Unlike the fragile, lightweight skulls of most pterosaurs, this beast's head was exceptionally heavy-duty. It was thick, reinforced, and covered in ridges that anchored massive, distinct muscle groups. Its neck was equally deviant, short, thick, and surprisingly muscular. Studies show it was only half the length expected for an Azhdarchid, sacrificing reach for raw power. Reinforced by bony ridges for muscle attachment, this neck offered incredible durability. It needed to be tough to wield that titanic skull. Research indicates this Frankenstein neck could handle extreme stress. In fact, it could withstand forces up to 10 times the animal's own body weight. This unique strength, combined with its terrifying jaw, suggests this pterosaur hunted on a level completely unlike its peers. This monster likely feasted on prey too massive to swallow whole, specifically dinosaurs. You see, while Hațeg Island forced the Hatzegopteryx to evolve into a titan, it had the opposite effect on its neighbors. Limited resources on the isolated landmass stunted their growth, creating a population of biological dwarfs. The landscape was crawling with pint-sized dinosaurs, including miniature hadrosaurs and even pocket-sized titanosaurs. These diminutive islanders, whether young or fully grown, were prime targets for the nightmarish apex predator. Wielding its massive beak as a weapon of war, it didn't just peck at its food. It likely bludgeoned or stabbed larger victims to death, brutal efficiency at its finest. Of course, dinosaurs weren't the only ones on the menu. Paleontologists view the Hatzegopteryx as a terrestrial stalker, a generalist that foraged primarily on the ground. It spent its days patrolling the earth, snatching up any creature foolish enough to cross its path that didn't put up a fight. Yet, despite being a ground-dwelling behemoth, it never lost its command of the skies. Its wings were fully formed, mirroring the anatomy of other known flying pterosaurs. This proves that its colossal size didn't ground it. However, given its stocky, tank-like build, scientists knew it needed a biological hack to get that heavy head off the ground. To achieve liftoff, it had to lighten the load of its mammoth skull. The secret lay inside the bone itself. The skull was riddled with pits and hollow chambers, drastically reducing weight while maintaining strength. Its wings utilized the same engineering. This internal honeycomb structure is unique among pterosaurs, and it is often compared to expanded polystyrene, better known in the States as styrofoam. This adaptation was crucial, but even with a lighter chassis, getting airborne was no walk in the park. To launch, the Hatzegopteryx likely had to vault into the air, using its powerful limbs to pole vault off the ground. Once aloft, we used to believe it was a master glider, capable of crossing vast oceans without breaking a sweat. The theory was that its massive wingspan allowed it to cover incredible distances without needing a rest. However, recent studies have grounded that idea. Due to its sheer mass, it likely couldn't sustain long-haul flights, relying instead on short, tactical bursts before landing. Experts now suspect it used flight primarily to scout for prey or to traverse its island domain quickly. Being able to hop across Hațeg Island gave this apex predator a terrifying advantage. The island was dominated by dense woodlands that made travel difficult for most large animals. Navigating that thick brush on foot was a nightmare, but the Hatzegopteryx could simply fly over it. The landscape was a maze of rivers, streams, and lush vegetation, fostering a diverse array of life. Unfortunately for those inhabitants, this biodiversity was just a buffet for the winged tyrant. The menu included dwarf dinosaurs like the Magyerosaurus, Titan, and Calmatosaurus. It also hunted Zalmoxis, Struthiosaurus, and elusive theropods like Elopteryx that stalked the undergrowth. Non-dinosaur prey included Allodoposuchus, various mammals like Barbadodon, and frogs. There were even snakes and amphibians like Albanerpeton. Other pterosaurs lived there too, with fossils of 3 distinct AZH darkids found, ranging from 3.5 meters, about 11.5 feet, to 5 meters in wingspan. Pterodontids were present too, but none came close to the sheer scale of the Hatzegopteryx. It was the undisputed lord of both soil and sky. Back then, Europe was a tropical paradise, and Hațeg Island enjoyed a subtropical climate, covered in vegetation that thrived in the heat. But alas, the reign of the Hatzegopteryx was destined to end. The Cretaceous period was violently cut short by a cataclysmic asteroid impact. This event wiped out the non-avian dinosaurs and the largest creatures to ever soar the heavens. If you enjoyed this deep dive into giants and dwarfs, I've got another story you'll love. Check out my video on the island that shrank massive elephants and turned a certain bird into one of the largest of its kind.